My brother mocked my business at his fancy dinner. Now he's forced to watch my empire become everything he wanted and learn what mocking cost him. I'm Andrea and I'm 26 years old. Let me backtrack to how I got to that humiliating dinner in the first place. 3 years ago, fresh out of college with a fashion degree, I realized I didn't want to be stuck designing clothes for someone else's vision. I wanted to build something bigger, something mine. While my classmates were fighting for internships at big fashion houses, I was teaching myself digital marketing and studying successful online retailers. The idea hit me during my senior year. I'd made friends with incredibly talented designers who were creating beautiful, unique pieces, but had no idea how to market them. They were artistic geniuses stuck selling at tiny craft fairs or posting on Instagram to their 100 followers. Meanwhile, I'd always been good at spotting trends and understanding what people actually wanted to buy. So, I started small, really small. I reached out to 5 designers from my network, people who made everything from hand-knitted sweaters to custom jewelry to vintage-inspired dresses. I offered to create an online platform where I'd handle all the marketing, photography, customer service, and logistics. They'd get exposure to a wider audience, and I'd take a percentage of sales. My parents thought I was crazy. Just get a job at Nordstrom, my mom kept saying. At least that's stable. My brother Marcus was even less supportive. He'd already graduated from Harvard with his architecture degree and landed a position at a prestigious firm. Every family dinner became an opportunity for him to remind everyone how practical his career choice was compared to my internet thing, but I ignored them and focused on building. I spent my savings on professional product photography, invested in a decent website, and started learning everything I could about social media marketing and search engine optimization. The learning curve was steep, but I was determined to prove that my internet thing could actually work. The first month, I made $300 in total sales. Not profit, total sales. After paying the designers their cut and covering my basic expenses, I had about $60 left. My dad actually laughed when I told him, $60 for a month of work? You could make more babysitting, but I saw the potential. The designers were getting orders from states they'd never shipped to before. Customers were leaving reviews saying they'd never found anything like these pieces in regular stores. I was creating something that didn't exist before, a curated marketplace for independent designers who actually cared about quality and uniqueness. By month 6, I was doing $2,000 in sales. By the end of year 1, I was hitting $15,000 monthly. The designers were thriving. Some of them quit their day jobs to focus on their craft full-time. And I was finally starting to see my vision come to life. Year 2 was when everything really took off. I'd built relationships with 30 designers across the country, developed a reputation for finding emerging talent before anyone else, and somehow convinced a few minor influencers to showcase our pieces. Sales jumped to $50,000 monthly, then $75,000, then 6 figures. That's when I knew I needed help. I rented a small office space, nothing fancy, just enough room for inventory management and a proper photography setup. I hired my first employee, Sarah, to handle customer service, and then Jake, to help with logistics. Both of them were fresh graduates like me, hungry and willing to learn. The growth felt almost surreal. Established brands started reaching out, wanting to be featured alongside our independent designers. We weren't just a little craft marketplace anymore. We were becoming a legitimate fashion destination. I had to hire more people, upgrade our website, and implement systems I'd never imagined needing when I started. Now 3 years in, we have 11 employees. Our monthly revenue is in the mid-6 figures. We've gone from a simple website to a full mobile app where each designer has their own branded profile. Major fashion bloggers write about us regularly, and we've been featured in online magazines I used to dream of reading. But here's the thing that really gets me. Through all of this success, my family still treats my business like it's some cute hobby I'll eventually outgrow. My brother especially loves to make little comments about how I'm playing entrepreneur and should consider getting serious about my future. Which brings me back to that dinner. Marcus was celebrating his 30th birthday at some upscale restaurant downtown, surrounded by his Harvard buddies and their perfectly polished girlfriends. I'd spent all day dealing with a major shipping delay that could have cost us thousands. But I still showed up because family is family, right? Wrong. Sometimes family is just people who happen to share your DNA but not your dreams. And sometimes the people who believe in you most are the ones you least expect. The restaurant Marcus chose for his birthday was the kind of place where the waiters wear ties and the wine list has more pages than most novels. I'd never been there before, but I recognized the type designed to intimidate anyone who didn't grow up with money. The kind of place where ordering the wrong fork makes you feel like you're wearing a neon sign saying "I don't belong here." I walked in wearing my best dress, a piece from one of our designers, actually. A beautiful navy blue number with subtle geometric patterns that I'd gotten as a sample. It was elegant, unique, and probably cost more to make than most department store dresses sold for. But looking around at Marcus' friends, I felt underdressed anyway. These weren't just successful people. These were people who'd never had to worry about being successful, if you know what I mean. The men wore watches that cost more than my first year's revenue, and the women carried purses I recognized from fashion weeks I'd never been invited to. Marcus made a big show of introducing me to everyone. "This is my little sister, Andrea," he'd say with that condescending smile. "She runs a little online business." Little. Everything about me was little in his world. I tried to make conversation, but it was like speaking different languages. When someone asked what I did, I'd explain about the platform, the designers, the technology behind personalized recommendations. They'd nod politely and then immediately change the subject to something about real estate investments or country club memberships. That's when Christian arrived. I'd met him a few times over the years at family gatherings. Marcus' best friend since Harvard. Always polite but distant. He was one of those people who seemed to know everyone in the room without trying too hard. Tall, confident, with the kind of presence that made waiters move a little faster, and conversations pause when he walked by. He was also the only person who asked follow-up questions when Marcus introduced me. "Online business? What kind of products?" When I mentioned fashion and independent designers, his eyes actually lit up with what seemed like genuine interest. "That's fascinating," he said. "The democratization of retail through digital platforms is one of the most disruptive trends in commerce right now. How did you handle the challenge of inventory management with multiple suppliers?" I blinked. Nobody, and I mean nobody, in my family had ever asked me a technical question about my business. They treated it like I was selling friendship bracelets at a school craft fair. Well, I started suddenly energized. We actually developed a hybrid model where designers maintain their own inventory but use our fulfillment center for shipping. It allows them to maintain control while giving customers consistent delivery experiences. Christian nodded thoughtfully. "Smart. Reduces your capital requirements while standardizing the customer journey. Have you considered expanding internationally?" Before I could answer, Marcus appeared beside us with that fake smile he reserved for when he thought I was embarrassing him. "Christian, don't let her bore you with business talk. Andrea is still figuring things out." Still figuring things out. Like I was playing dress up instead of running a company that was actually profitable. The dismissal stung, but I kept my composure. I'd learned a long time ago that reacting to Marcus' comments only made them worse. The dinner progressed predictably. Stories about Harvard connections, discussions of vacation homes, complaints about how hard it was to find good help these days. I listened, smiled when appropriate, and counted the minutes until I could politely escape. That's when the conversation turned to business aspirations. One of Marcus' friends was talking about expanding his father's law practice. Another was launching a consulting firm with family money backing him. The women discussed charity board positions and interior design projects. "What about you, Andrea?" asked Christian's date, a stunning blonde named Victoria. "Any big plans for your little shop?" There it was again. Little shop. I took a breath and decided to be honest. "Actually, I'm hoping to expand into physical retail. The online platform has been successful enough that I think we're ready for brick-and-mortar locations. It would allow customers to experience the pieces in person and give our designers a physical presence." The table went quiet for a moment. Then Marcus laughed. Not a happy laugh, but the kind that made my stomach clench. "Andrea," he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Your garage business is never going to grow that big. It's a cute little hobby, but you should really think about getting a real job before you get too old to be hireable." The words hit like a slap. Not just because of what he said, but because of how he said it, with such casual cruelty, such complete dismissal of everything I'd built. His friends chuckled like he'd made a clever joke. Victoria covered her mouth to hide her smile. I felt my face flush hot, but I forced myself to smile. "You might be right," I said evenly, though my voice sounded strange in my own ears. "Thanks for the advice." I excused myself to the bathroom where I stared at my reflection and took slow, deep breaths. 3 years of building something real, something valuable, and my own brother reduced it to a garage hobby in front of people I'd never see again. When I returned to the table, the conversation had moved on to golf handicaps. I sat quietly through dessert, made appropriate small talk, and waited for my moment to leave. "I should head out," I announced as the waiter brought the check. "Early morning tomorrow." "Of course," Marcus said without looking up from his phone. "Drive safely." No hug. No goodbye. No thanks for coming. Just dismissal like I was staff leaving after clearing the dishes. I walked to my car in the restaurant parking lot, my heels clicking against the asphalt. The night air was cool and I stood by my car for a moment, looking back at the restaurant windows glowing warm against the darkness. Inside, my brother was probably telling his friends some story about his naive little sister who thought she could build a business from her laptop. They'd laugh, order another round of drinks, and never think about me again. I drove home with the radio off, thinking about everything I'd accomplished, and why it still felt like nothing when my family looked at me. Was I crazy to think I could expand? Was Marcus right that I should quit while I was ahead? By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to let one humiliating dinner derail 3 years of progress. I had customers who loved what we offered, designers who depended on the platform, employees who believed in our vision. I was building something real, whether my family understood it or not. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Marcus' words over and over, hearing the laughter of his friends echoing in my head. Garage business, little hobby, real job. Each phrase felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. I grabbed my laptop and opened our analytics dashboard. Something I'd been doing lately whenever self-doubt crept in. Numbers didn't lie, and the numbers told a different story than the one Marcus shared at dinner. Revenue up 43% from last quarter. Customer retention 87%. Designer satisfaction scores averaging 4.8 out of 5. Order volume increasing steadily month over month. These weren't hobby numbers. These were real business metrics that most established companies would envy. I scrolled through recent customer reviews. Found my wedding dress here and it was absolutely perfect. These designers are so talented. I can't find anything like this anywhere else. Best customer service I've ever experienced online. Page after page of 5-star reviews from people who genuinely loved what we'd built. Then I opened my email and found 3 messages that had come in during dinner. 2 from established brands wanting to partner with us and 1 from a major fashion blogger asking to feature our platform in an upcoming article about innovative retail models. This was the reality Marcus couldn't see or chose to ignore. We weren't just surviving, we were thriving. But somehow his dismissal still stung more than all the success stories combined. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by my living room window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there were 11 people who depended on me for their paychecks. Dozens of designers who'd grown their businesses through our platform. Thousands of customers who trusted us to curate beautiful, unique pieces they couldn't find anywhere else. Maybe that should be enough. Maybe I didn't need my family's approval to feel proud of what I'd accomplished. But the truth was, I did want it. I wanted them to see me as more than Marcus' little sister who played at being an entrepreneur. The phone rang at exactly 11:47 p.m. I almost didn't answer. Who calls that late unless it's an emergency? But the number looked familiar though I couldn't place it immediately. Hello, Andrea. This is Christian. Christian Hayes, Marcus's friend. I hope I'm not calling too late. My heart stopped. Christian was calling me. How did he even get my number? No, it's fine. I was still up. Is everything okay? Everything's great. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I've been thinking about our conversation earlier tonight, and I wanted to discuss something with you. Do you have a few minutes? I set my tea down, suddenly very awake. Sure. What's on your mind? Your business model is brilliant, he said without preamble. I've been researching the multi-brand platform space since I got home, and what you've built is exactly the kind of innovation that's reshaping retail. I blinked. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I'm not being kind. I'm being accurate. I spend a lot of time evaluating emerging companies, and most of them are trying to solve problems that don't exist or entering markets that are already oversaturated, but you've identified a real gap. The disconnect between talented independent creators and consumers who want unique quality pieces. My pulse was racing. This wasn't the conversation I'd expected when I saw his name on my phone. I appreciate that. It's nice to hear from someone who understands what we're trying to do. Here's the thing, Andrea. You mentioned wanting to expand into physical retail. That's a massive undertaking that requires significant capital, strategic planning, and operational expertise. Most online companies fail when they try to make that transition because they underestimate the complexity. My heart sank. Here it comes, I thought. The polite explanation of why my expansion dreams were unrealistic, just like Marcus said, but delivered more diplomatically. However, Christian continued, with the right backing and guidance, I think you could not only succeed, but dominate that space. The question is whether you're serious about scaling this into something truly transformational. I found my voice. I'm very serious. This isn't a hobby for me. It's my life's work. Good, because I'd like to propose a partnership. I'm prepared to invest $50 million to help you build the infrastructure for physical retail locations, expand your technology platform, and scale your operations nationally. The world tilted sideways. $50 million. Had I heard that correctly? I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? He chuckled softly. $50 million. It's enough to open your first flagship stores, build a proper supply chain management system, hire the team you'll need, and establish a marketing presence that matches your ambition. I set the phone down for a second, staring at it like it might be playing tricks on me. Then I picked it up again. Christian, I don't understand. Why would you want to invest in my company? You barely know me. Actually, I know more about you than you might think. Marcus' sister, Sophie. You remember her from that Christmas party 2 years ago. She's been showing me your platform for months. She's obsessed with it, constantly ordering from your designers. When she found out I'd be at Marcus' dinner tonight, she specifically asked me to talk to you about the business. Sophie, Marcus' youngest sister, who I'd always liked but rarely saw. She'd been buying from us. I didn't realize she was a customer, I said weakly. One of your best, apparently. She's the one who convinced me to take a serious look at what you've built. And what I found was exactly the kind of company my fund looks for. Innovative, profitable, scalable, and led by someone with both vision and execution skills. Your fund? Of course. I'd known Christian came from money, but I'd never thought about what he actually did for work. We specialize in retail innovation and digital transformation. I backed successful expansions for 12 companies in the past 5 years, including 3 that went from online only to major brick-and-mortar presence. I know what works and what doesn't. I was quiet for a long moment, trying to process everything he'd said. An hour ago, I'd been questioning whether my business was even real. Now, someone was offering to invest more money than I'd ever imagined having access to. This is incredible, I finally said. But I have to ask, does Marcus know you're calling me? Christian was quiet for a few seconds. Marcus doesn't know, and frankly, his opinion isn't relevant to my investment decisions. I evaluate opportunities based on merit, not family politics. Something in his tone suggested he wasn't a huge fan of my brother's attitude either. I'd like to meet with you properly, he continued. Somewhere we can go through your financials, discuss expansion strategies, and talk through the specifics of a partnership. Are you free this Friday? Friday? 3 days away. 3 days to prepare for a conversation that could change everything. Yes, I said, probably too quickly. I'm absolutely free. Perfect. I'll have my assistant send you some information to review beforehand. Market analyses, expansion models, that sort of thing. And Andrea? Yes? What your brother said tonight was wrong. You've built something remarkable and it deserves to be scaled properly. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. After we hung up, I sat in my living room staring at my phone until the screen went dark. $50 million. National expansion, physical stores, everything I'd dreamed about, but hadn't dared to voice, even to myself. Marcus thought my business was a cute hobby I'd eventually outgrow. Turns out I was just getting started. Have you ever had someone completely underestimate you only to have life prove them spectacularly wrong? Friday couldn't come fast enough. I spent the entire week preparing for the meeting with Christian, researching everything I could about retail expansion, studying the materials his assistant sent, and practicing my presentation until I could deliver it in my sleep. The documents he'd provided were impressive and intimidating in equal measure. Market analyses showing the growth potential for curated multi-brand retail. Case studies of successful online to offline transitions, financial models that made my head spin with their complexity and potential. By Thursday night, I had a comprehensive expansion plan laid out, flagship stores in 5 major cities, a hybrid inventory model that showcased our top designers while maintaining the online platform's breadth, and a customer experience that seamlessly integrated digital and physical shopping. I also had a severe case of imposter syndrome. Who was I to be discussing $50 million investments? 3 years ago, I was a college student eating ramen and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But then I looked at our latest monthly report, 6 figures in revenue, designers from coast to coast, customers in 48 states, and reminded myself that I'd already done the impossible. I'd built something from nothing. The rest was just scaling. Christian had suggested we meet at his office downtown. The building was one of those sleek glass towers that dominated the city skyline. All marble lobbies and elevator banks that whisked you to floors you needed keycards to access. His office occupied a corner of the 32nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. The space was modern but warm, filled with contemporary art and furniture that looked comfortable enough to actually use. Nothing like the stuffy, intimidating offices I'd imagined. Andrea, he said, standing to greet me as his assistant showed me in. Thank you for coming. I hope the traffic wasn't too bad. Not at all, I replied, accepting his handshake. He was more casual than I'd expected, wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt instead of the suit I'd prepared for. Can I get you coffee? Water. I have to warn you, this might be a long conversation. Coffee would be great. He poured from a machine that looked like it belonged in a high-end cafe, handing me a mug that was perfectly balanced and exactly the right temperature. So, he said, settling into the chair across from me. Tell me about your vision for physical retail. Not the practical aspects. I've read your materials and they're excellent, but the experience you want to create. I took a breath and launched into the explanation I'd been rehearsing. The online platform works because we solve discovery problems. People want unique pieces, but they don't know how to find independent designers. We curate that for them. Physical stores would take that concept further. I pulled out my tablet and showed him the mock-ups I'd created. Imagine walking into a space that feels like a gallery and a boutique combined. Each designer has a dedicated section that tells their story, where they're from, what inspires them, how they create their pieces. Customers can touch the fabrics, try things on, but also scan QR codes to see the designer's full collection online. Christian studied the images, nodding thoughtfully. Experiential retail. Smart. What about inventory management? You can't stock every designer's full line in physical locations. Exactly. That's why the hybrid model works. We'd showcase maybe 20% of each designer's collection in store with the rest available for immediate online ordering. Customers could place orders in the store and either have items shipped or come back to pick them up. And the economics, this was where I felt most confident. Our margins are already strong because we've built direct relationships with designers. Physical retail would actually improve profitability in several ways. Higher average order values when customers can touch products, reduced return rates, and opportunities for upselling through personal styling services. For the next 2 hours, we dove deep into every aspect of the expansion plan. Christian asked questions I hadn't thought of, pointed out challenges I'd overlooked, and suggested solutions I never would have considered. But what struck me most was how he listened. Really listened. When I explained our designer onboarding process, he asked follow-up questions about quality control. When I described our customer service philosophy, he wanted to know how we'd maintain those standards at scale. This wasn't someone humoring a naive entrepreneur. This was a serious business conversation between equals. There's one more thing we should discuss, he said as we wrapped up the formal presentation. Partnership structure. I'm not interested in being a silent investor who writes checks and disappears. I want to be actively involved in strategic decisions, especially around real estate operations and scaling technology. My stomach fluttered. What does that mean practically? It means we'd be partners in the truest sense. You'd maintain majority ownership and operational control. This is your vision and your company, but I'd want a seat at the table for major decisions and the ability to contribute expertise where it's most valuable. I studied his face, trying to read his intentions. And if we disagree on something important? He smiled. Then we argue about it until we find a solution we both believe in. I've learned that the best business relationships are built on productive conflict, not polite agreement. Something about his directness put me at ease. I'd been expecting corporate doublespeak and hidden agendas, but Christian seemed refreshingly straightforward. I have to ask, I said. Why me? Why this company? You could invest in established businesses with proven track records. He was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the city below. Because established businesses rarely have room to grow exponentially. They're optimized for their current scale, which makes it hard to transform them into something completely different. He turned back to me. You've built something that has all the right fundamentals, but hasn't reached its full potential yet. That's exactly where I want to invest at the inflection point between promising startup and major market player. And personally, I respect what you've accomplished. Building a profitable business from scratch while being dismissed by everyone around you takes a special kind of determination. I invest in people as much as ideas, and you've proven you can execute under pressure. The meeting ended with homework assignments for both of us. He'd prepare term sheets and partnership documents for me to review. I'd work on detailed financial projections and location analyses for our first 3 stores. As I waited for the elevator, I felt like I was floating. 6 hours ago, expanding into physical retail had been a distant dream. Now, it was becoming a concrete plan with specific timelines and budgets. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How was your week? Haven't heard from you since my birthday. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations could wait until I had something interesting to tell him. And based on how this meeting had gone, that conversation was going to be very interesting indeed. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of due diligence meetings, financial projections, and late-night phone calls with Christian's legal team. Every day brought new documents to review, new questions to answer, and new aspects of the business I'd never had to think about before. Christian wasn't kidding about being an active partner. He had opinions about everything. Our technology platform, our hiring strategy, our marketing approach, even our office layout. At first, I found it overwhelming. I'd been making every decision myself for 3 years. And suddenly, I had someone questioning choices I'd never thought to question. But his input was invaluable. When I showed him our plans for the first flagship store in Boston, he immediately identified issues I'd missed. You're underestimating foot traffic patterns, he said, marking up the floor plan with a red pen. This layout assumes customers will browse methodically, but retail behavior is much more chaotic. He was right. I'd been thinking like an online retailer where customers followed logical paths from category to category. Physical retail required understanding how people actually moved through space, how their attention shifted, how impulse purchases happened. Have you spent time observing successful boutiques? He asked during one of our planning sessions. Some, I admitted, but mostly I've been focused on the business model. We need to fix that. Tomorrow, we're going shopping. The next day, Christian picked me up at 8 a.m., armed with coffee and a list of stores he wanted me to see. Not just fashion retailers, but any business that created exceptional customer experiences. Our first stop was a high-end bookstore that had somehow survived the digital revolution by becoming more than just a place to buy books. They hosted author events, served excellent coffee, and created cozy reading nooks that made people want to linger. Watch how people move, Christian murmured as we browsed the fiction section. See how they pick up books, flip through pages, set them down, and come back. That's exactly the kind of engagement you want with clothing. Next was a jewelry boutique where every piece was displayed like a work of art. The owner, a woman named Elena, spent 20 minutes explaining the story behind a necklace to a customer who wasn't even planning to buy anything. But by the end of the conversation, the customer was trying it on and asking about matching earrings. Storytelling, Christian noted as we left. People don't just buy products, they buy narratives. Your designers have incredible stories. We need to make sure those stories are front and center in the retail experience. By the end of the day, I had pages of notes and a completely different understanding of what we were trying to build. It wasn't just about selling clothes. It was about creating a space where customers could discover something special, connect with the creators behind the pieces, and feel part of a community that valued craftsmanship and originality. Meanwhile, my own team was adjusting to the rapid changes. Sarah, who'd been handling customer service since our early days, was promoted to operations manager. Jake took over logistics and inventory. We hired 3 new people to handle the increased volume and started looking for additional office space. The growth was exciting, but also nerve-wracking. Every week brought new milestones. Our highest sales day ever, our 1,000th designer application, our first feature in a major fashion magazine, but it also brought new responsibilities and pressures I wasn't sure I was ready for. Imposter syndrome, Christian said when I confessed my anxiety during one of our weekly check-ins. It's completely normal when you're scaling this quickly. The key is to remember that you've already proven you can handle more than you think you can. He was right, but it didn't make the feeling go away. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. convinced I was about to make a massive mistake that would destroy everything I'd built. Those doubts became harder to ignore when my family finally found out about the partnership. I'd managed to keep it quiet for almost a month, but news travels fast in small business circles, especially when significant investments are involved. My mother called on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice tight with confusion and what might have been hurt. "Andrea, honey, I just heard from Mrs. Patterson that you're opening stores and something about a major investor. Why didn't you tell us?" I closed my laptop and walked to the window of our new temporary office. How could I explain that I hadn't told them because I'd stopped expecting them to care about my business updates? "It's still early stages, Mom." I didn't want to say anything until the details were finalized. But $50 million, Andrea, that's real money. That's serious business. Funny how the same woman who dismissed my company as a hobby for 3 years suddenly understood it was serious business when dollar amounts got large enough. Yes, it's serious. It's been serious for a while now. Well, your father and I are very proud of you. We always knew you had it in you. Did you? I thought but didn't say because I distinctly remembered being told to get a job at Nordstrom and stop playing around on the internet. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate that. Will you bring this investor to Marcus' engagement party next month? We'd love to meet him. And there it was, the real reason for the call. Not to celebrate my success, but to figure out how they could benefit from it socially. I'll see if he's available, I said, knowing I had absolutely no intention of subjecting Christian to that particular circus. After I hung up, I sat in my office thinking about how much had changed in just a few weeks. A month ago, my family saw me as Marcus' younger sister, who played at being an entrepreneur. Now, they wanted to show off my investor at parties. But the most important change wasn't about them or their perception of me. It was about my own confidence in what I was building. For the first time since starting the company, I truly believed we could become something extraordinary. And that belief was about to be tested in ways I never could have anticipated. Marcus' engagement party was exactly the kind of event I'd been dreading. Another opportunity for my family to perform their version of success for an audience of people I barely knew. The venue was a private club downtown, all dark wood and oil paintings, the kind of place that had probably never updated its membership criteria since 1953. I almost didn't go. Christian and I were supposed to spend the weekend reviewing lease agreements for our first store location. And frankly, that sounded much more appealing than making small talk with Marcus' Harvard crowd, but my mother had called 3 times asking if I was bringing my business partner, and I knew my absence would become its own dramatic event. So, I went alone, despite their obvious hopes that I'd parade Christian around like a trophy. The party was in full swing when I arrived. Marcus stood near the bar with his fiancée, a perfectly nice woman named Catherine, who came from the kind of old money family that made even my brother seem nouveau riche. They looked happy together, and I was genuinely glad for them despite everything. Andrea, my mother, appeared at my elbow almost immediately. "You look lovely, honey. Where's your investor friend?" "Christian couldn't make it," I said, which was true. I'd never actually invited him. Her face fell slightly. "Oh, that's too bad. I was hoping to meet him." I was saved from further explanation by the arrival of several family friends who wanted to hear about the big business deal they'd apparently been hearing about. For the next hour, I found myself retelling the story of our expansion plans to people who listened with the kind of polite interest reserved for other people's vacation photos. The conversations followed a predictable pattern. Someone would ask about the investment. I'd give a brief explanation of our retail expansion plans. They'd make impressed noises and then immediately change the subject to something more comfortable like real estate or golf handicaps. It was exhausting. Honestly, these were the same people who'd been hearing about my little internet business for 3 years without showing the slightest interest. Now that money was involved, serious money, suddenly everyone wanted details. I was getting a drink at the bar when Christian appeared beside me. "Whiskey neat," he told the bartender, then turned to me with a slight smile. "Hope you don't mind the surprise visit." I finished the lease reviews early and thought I'd stop by. My heart did a small flip. He'd actually come. "How did you know where to find me?" "Your mother may have mentioned the address when I called the office looking for you." She seemed very excited about the possibility of meeting me. I laughed despite myself. I'm sure she was. "Fair warning, you're about to become the most interesting person at this party." "Looking forward to it," he said, though his expression suggested otherwise. We were making our way through the crowd when Marcus spotted us. His face lit up with the kind of enthusiasm I rarely saw directed at me. "Christian, you made it." He practically rushed over, abandoning his conversation mid-sentence. "Catherine, this is Christian Hayes, the one I told you about, the investor working with Andrea." Catherine smiled politely and extended her hand. "It's wonderful to meet you. Marcus speaks about you often." "Congratulations on your engagement," Christian replied smoothly. "Marcus is a lucky man." I watched the interaction with growing unease. Marcus was performing his version of the gracious host. But there was something possessive about how he positioned himself between Christian and me as if he were the intermediary in our business relationship. "We should get you both some food," Marcus said, guiding us toward the buffet. "And I want to introduce Christian to some people. Dad will definitely want to meet you. He's always interested in hearing about successful investment strategies." Before I could object, Marcus was steering Christian toward a group of his father's friends, leaving me standing by the shrimp cocktail, feeling oddly excluded from my own business partnership. I watched from across the room as Marcus held court, explaining to anyone who would listen how he'd connected his sister with his old friend from Harvard. The story grew more elaborate with each telling until it sounded like Marcus had orchestrated the entire investment as a favor to me. "Interesting family dynamics," said a voice beside me. I turned to find Catherine holding 2 glasses of wine and offering me one. That's one way to put it. I accepted the wine gratefully. "Marcus talks about you a lot. You know, he's very proud of your success." I nearly choked on my wine. "Is he?" "That's not exactly the impression I get." Catherine studied my face carefully. "Brothers can be complicated, especially when their little sisters surpass their expectations." There was something knowing in her tone that made me look at her more closely. Surpass expectations? Marcus has been following your company's progress more closely than you probably realize. He shows me your press coverage. Brags about your revenue numbers to his friends. I think your success intimidates him a bit. This was news to me. He called my business a garage hobby at his birthday dinner. Catherine winced. That sounds like Marcus when he feels threatened. He gets defensive and says things he doesn't mean. She paused, watching her fiancé charm another group of investors. He's been worried that Christian would be more impressed with your business than his architecture projects. I followed her gaze across the room where Christian was listening politely to Marcus explain something with expansive hand gestures. Are you saying my brother is jealous? I'm saying your brother is human. And sometimes humans say cruel things when they're feeling insecure about their own accomplishments. It was a perspective I'd never considered. I'd always assumed Marcus' dismissiveness came from genuine contempt for what I was doing. The possibility that it stemmed from his own insecurity was somehow both better and worse. Our conversation was interrupted by loud laughter from Marcus' group. I looked over to see Christian shaking hands with my father while Marcus beamed beside them like he'd personally arranged the introduction. I should rescue him, I said to Catherine. Probably a good idea. Your mother is heading over there with the photo album. I made my way through the crowd just in time to hear my father saying, always knew Andrea had excellent business instincts. We're very proud of what she's accomplished. Dad's being modest, Marcus added. He's the one who taught her to think strategically. Business runs in the family. I stopped walking. Business runs in the family? From the same people who'd spent 3 years suggesting I get a job in retail instead of building my own company. Christian caught my eye over Marcus' shoulder and raised an eyebrow slightly, as if to say, are you hearing this? Actually, I said, joining the circle. I think I developed my business instinct socius despite the family advice, not because of it. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. My father cleared his throat. Marcus looked like I'd just announced his engagement was a sham. Andrea, my mother said quickly. Why don't you and Christian get some air on the terrace? It's such a lovely evening. It was clearly a suggestion designed to remove me from the conversation before I said anything else inconvenient, but it also sounded like exactly what I needed. Great idea, I said. Christian, want to see the view? We escaped to the terrace where the city lights twinkled below us, and the noise of the party became a distant hum. Interesting family you have, Christian said, leaning against the railing. That's a diplomatic way to put it. Your brother spent 15 minutes explaining how he'd been mentoring your business development and how the investment was really the result of his networking. I closed my eyes. Please tell me you didn't believe any of that, Andrea. His voice was gentle but firm. I've seen your financials. I've reviewed your strategic plans. I've watched you handle complex negotiations and make difficult decisions. Trust me when I say I know exactly who built this company. Something tight in my chest loosened. Thank you. Sometimes it's hard to remember that when everyone around you is rewriting history, that's what success does to people. Suddenly, everyone wants to claim credit for supporting you, even if they spent years telling you to quit. We stood in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the traffic move through the streets below. Ready to go back in? Christian asked eventually. Actually, would it be terrible if we just left? I'd done my family duty for the evening. He grinned. I thought you'd never ask. Besides, we have work to do. Those lease agreements won't review themselves. As we gathered our coats and made polite excuses to leave, I caught Marcus watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment, frustration, something that might have been respect. Whatever it was, I didn't have time to analyze it. I had a business to build, stores to open, and dreams to turn into reality. And for the first time in my life, I had a partner who believed in those dreams as much as I did. The real work was just beginning. 3 months later, I was standing in what would soon become our first flagship store in Boston's Back Bay, watching contractors install the last of our custom lighting fixtures. The space was everything I'd envisioned. Airy, sophisticated with distinct sections for each designer that told their stories through carefully curated displays. The electrical inspection is scheduled for tomorrow. Our project manager, David, called from across the store. If everything passes, we can start moving inventory in next week. Next week, after months of planning, designing, hiring, and coordinating, we were actually going to open a physical store. The reality of it was both thrilling and terrifying. Christian appeared beside me, holding 2 coffee cups from the cafe down the street. "You look like you're about to throw up," he observed, handing me the caffeine. "I might," I admitted. "What if nobody comes? What if people walk in, look around, and walk right back out? What if we've completely misread the market? Then we'll learn from it and adjust," he said calmly. "But that's not going to happen. Do you know how many pre-opening inquiries we've gotten? The Boston Globe wants to do a feature story. 3 local influencers have asked for private shopping appointments. Your email list for this city alone has 12,000 people." He was right. But logic didn't make the butterflies in my stomach any less active. This was the biggest risk I'd ever taken. Online retail felt safe by comparison. If something didn't work, you could adjust quickly, test new approaches, pivot without anyone noticing. But a physical store, that was a public statement that everyone could see and judge. You know what the difference is between successful entrepreneurs and everyone else? Christian asked, watching me fidget with my coffee cup. "Inherited trust funds," I suggested, only half joking. He laughed. "The willingness to be uncomfortable. Most people avoid situations where they might fail publicly. Entrepreneurs seek them out because that's where the biggest opportunities are." Very philosophical. "Are you going to charge me extra for life coaching?" "It's included in the partnership agreement." Small print. Despite my nerves, I had to smile. One of the things I'd come to appreciate about working with Christian was his ability to keep things light when the pressure got intense. He took the business seriously without taking himself too seriously. The next few days passed in a blur of final preparations. Our inventory arrived in carefully labeled boxes. Samples from 35 designers whose work represented the best of what we'd curated online. Each piece had been photographed, tagged, and entered into our new point-of-sale system that integrated seamlessly with our online platform. Sarah flew in from our main office to help coordinate the opening, bringing Jake and 2 of our newest team members. Watching them work together efficiently handling logistics and customer service protocols, I felt a surge of pride in what we'd built. These weren't just employees anymore. They were partners in creating something special. "Andrea." Sarah appeared at my elbow holding a tablet. "We need to make a decision about the opening event. Do we want to do something low-key for the first few days or should we plan a proper launch party?" I considered the options. Part of me wanted to ease into things gradually, minimize the risk of any public embarrassment if things went wrong. But another part of me, the part that had spent 3 years building this company despite everyone's doubts, wanted to celebrate properly. Launch party. I decided, let's do this right. Great. I'll start reaching out to local press and influencers. What about inviting family and friends? My stomach clenched slightly. Send invitations to my parents and I guess Marcus and Catherine. I paused. Actually, maybe don't mention Christian's involvement in the invitation. Let it be a surprise. Sarah raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. She'd been with the company long enough to know that my family relationships were complicated. The opening was scheduled for the following Friday. By Wednesday, we had confirmations from local fashion bloggers, the lifestyle editor from Boston Magazine, and several potential customers who'd been following our progress on social media. The energy in the store was electric as we made final adjustments to displays and trained our new sales associates. Thursday night, I barely slept. I kept running through everything that could go wrong. Technology failures, inventory problems, customers hating the selection. But I also kept thinking about everything that could go right. And that possibility was almost more nerve-wracking than the potential failures. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly. Typical New England weather that made me question whether anyone would want to venture out for a store opening. But by noon, the rain had stopped and weak sunlight was filtering through the windows, highlighting our carefully arranged displays in exactly the way I'd hoped. "You ready for this?" Christian asked as we did a final walkthrough before opening the doors. I looked around the store at the beautiful clothes arranged like works of art, at the QR codes that would let customers explore each designer's full collection, at the comfortable seating areas where people could relax and really consider their purchases. This was everything I dreamed of when I started the company. "I'm ready," I said. And for the first time all week, I actually meant it. We opened the doors at 2 p.m. and within minutes, people were streaming in. Not huge crowds, but steady traffic of curious shoppers, fashion enthusiasts, and people who'd been following our online platform. I watched from behind the checkout counter as customers moved through the space, picking up pieces, reading the designer stories, scanning codes to see more options. By 6 p.m., we'd made our sales goal for the entire first week. By 8 p.m., when the official opening party began, I knew we'd created something special. What do you think will happen next when my family finally sees what I've really built? The opening party was everything I'd hoped for and more. The store buzzed with conversation as people discovered pieces they'd never seen anywhere else, met other customers who shared their appreciation for unique design, and learned the stories behind their favorite items. Local fashion bloggers were taking photos and posting to their Instagram accounts in real time. The lifestyle editor from Boston Magazine spent 20 minutes interviewing me about our expansion plans and the future of independent retail. 3 customers made purchases over $500, including one woman who bought an entire outfit for her daughter's wedding. I was chatting with a potential wholesale client when I spotted familiar faces near the entrance. My parents had arrived, looking slightly overwhelmed by the energy and sophistication of the space. They dressed up for the occasion. My father in his best suit, my mother wearing jewelry I only saw at special events. "Excuse me," I told the wholesale client. "I should go greet my family." As I approached them, I could see my mother taking in every detail. The lighting, the displays, the quality of the merchandise, the obvious care that had gone into creating the space. Her expression shifted from uncertainty to something that might have been impressed surprise. "Andrea, honey," she said, giving me a careful hug that avoided wrinkling either of our outfits. "This is just beautiful." I had no idea it would be so professional. Professional. From anyone else, that might have been a backhanded compliment, but from my mother, it was genuine praise. She'd expected something smaller, perhaps more amateur. Instead, she was seeing a sophisticated retail environment that could compete with any boutique in the city. "Thank you for coming," I said. "Let me show you around." For the next 15 minutes, I gave them the full tour, explaining our hybrid inventory model, introducing them to our sales associates, showing them how the QR code system worked. My father asked thoughtful questions about rent costs and foot traffic projections. My mother tried on several pieces and complimented the quality of the fabrics. "Where's Marcus?" I asked, noticing he hadn't arrived with them. "He and Catherine got held up at work," my mother explained. "But they're planning to stop by before you close." I felt a small twist of anxiety. The evening had been going so well. Successful sales, positive press coverage, enthusiastic customers. Having Marcus show up when everything was obviously thriving felt like tempting fate. But I pushed the worry aside and focused on enjoying the moment. This was my night, my success. My vision finally realized in physical form. Around 9 p.m., as the official party was winding down, Sarah approached me with excited news. "Andrea, you need to see this. We just got an email from a major retailer asking about licensing our curation model for their online platform. And 3 more cities have reached out about hosting pop-up events." Pop-up events? Temporary stores in their markets while we're planning permanent locations. Boston, Portland, and Austin all want to bring our designers to their customers. I stared at the email on her tablet. This was beyond anything we'd projected for the first month, let alone the first day. "There's more," Sarah continued. "The mobile app downloads have tripled since this morning. People are taking photos of items in the store and then ordering different colors or sizes through the app. The integration is working exactly like you hoped." The mobile app had been Christian's idea, a way to seamlessly connect the physical and digital shopping experiences. Customers could scan any item in the store to see the full collection, read reviews, check sizing information, and place orders for immediate shipping or store pickup. "Show me the numbers," I said. Sarah pulled up our real-time analytics. App downloads, online sales, email signups, social media mentions. Every metric was spiking dramatically. The physical store wasn't just successful on its own. It was driving growth across our entire platform. This is incredible. I breathed, watching the numbers update in real time. It gets better. That fashion blogger with 200,000 followers just posted about us, and her story is already getting reshared by bigger accounts. We might want to consider increasing our inventory orders for next week. I looked around the store, which was still busy despite the late hour. Customers were lingering, trying things on, chatting with our associates about styling options. This wasn't just shopping. It was an experience people wanted to have. Andrea. I turned to find Marcus and Catherine approaching, both looking slightly windblown and apologetic. "Sorry we're so late," Catherine said, kissing my cheek. Marcus got stuck in a client meeting that ran forever. Marcus was looking around the store with an expression I couldn't quite read. Surprise, certainly. Maybe a hint of something that could have been pride or possibly calculation. "This is really something, sis," he said after a moment. Much bigger than I expected. Much bigger than he expected. Not congratulations or "I'm proud of you," but acknowledgement that his expectations had been wrong. "Thank you," I said evenly. "Let me show you around." As we walked through the store, I could see Marcus taking mental notes. The customer demographics, the price points, the obvious success of the opening. Catherine asked genuine questions about the designers and seemed impressed by the storytelling aspect of our displays. "So, this Christian guy," Marcus said as we paused near the jewelry section. "He's been pretty hands-on with the development. Very hands-on. He's been instrumental in making this possible. Where is he tonight? I'd love to thank him for taking such good care of my little sister." The phrase "taking care of" made my jaw clench slightly, but I kept my voice neutral. "He's here somewhere, probably talking to the press." "Great. I'll find him before we leave." As if summoned by our conversation, Christian appeared from the back of the store carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing the kind of satisfied smile that comes from watching a plan work exactly as intended. "Andrea," he said, "we need to celebrate. Sales numbers are through the roof. The press coverage is fantastic, and I just got off the phone with investors who want to discuss additional funding for faster expansion." "Additional funding?" Marcus' voice was sharp with sudden interest. "Marcus, this is Christian Hayes," I said, watching my brother's expression carefully. Christian, my brother Marcus, and his fiancée, Catherine. "Marcus." Christian extended his hand warmly. "I've heard so much about you. Andrea talks about her family often." I definitely did not talk about my family often, but Christian was being diplomatically polite. "Likewise," Marcus replied, though his handshake seemed a bit too firm. "I understand you've been quite involved in Andrea's expansion plans. It's been a privilege to partner with her. Andrea's built something truly innovative here." "Partner," Marcus repeated thoughtfully. "That's interesting. I didn't realize you were so formally involved." There was something in his tone that made me nervous. But before I could redirect the conversation, Catherine jumped in with questions about our expansion timeline. And the moment passed. The evening ended with champagne toasts, final customer purchases, and promises from the press to feature us in upcoming articles. As we locked up the store for the night, I felt exhausted, but triumphant. We'd done it. We'd successfully translated our online success into physical retail, and the response had exceeded every optimistic projection. But watching Marcus' face during his conversation with Christian, I had a feeling the real test was just beginning. The weeks following our Boston opening were a whirlwind of success that left me feeling like I was living someone else's life. Sales continued to exceed projections. The mobile app climbed the charts in the shopping category, and media coverage brought us attention from customers and competitors alike. But the real game changer came 6 weeks after opening, when Christian walked into our main office with news that would transform everything we'd built. "I just got off a call with the team in Dubai," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "They want to accelerate the expansion timeline." "Accelerate how?" "Instead of opening stores one at a time over the next 2 years, they're proposing we launch in 5 cities simultaneously within the next 6 months. I sat down my coffee trying to process what he just said. 5 cities? That's not acceleration. I don't even know what that is. It's aggressive, he agreed. But the market response has been so strong that they think waiting is actually riskier than moving fast. The opportunity window won't stay open forever. He pulled out his tablet and showed me market analyses for our target cities: Chicago, Austin, Seattle, Portland, and Washington, D.C. Each location had strong demographics for our customer base, established fashion scenes, and retail spaces that could work with our design concept. The logistics alone would be insane, I said, scrolling through the projections. Hiring teams in 5 cities, coordinating inventory, training staff. Challenging but manageable. We'd need to bring in specialized help. A retail operations expert, probably a regional marketing coordinator. But your systems are solid enough to support rapid scaling. I studied the numbers more carefully. The projected revenue was staggering. If successful, we'd go from a single-store startup to a major regional retailer essentially overnight. But the risk was proportional to the opportunity. What does your team in Dubai think about the mobile app performance? Christian's eyes lit up. That's actually the most exciting part. They want to spin the app into a standalone platform that other retailers can license. Think about it. Any boutique or department store could use our curation algorithms and designer network to enhance their own offerings. The implications were enormous. Instead of just being a retailer, we could become the technology infrastructure that powered personalized fashion discovery for an entire industry. How fast are we talking about implementation? Proof of concept in 3 months. Beta testing with select partners in 6 months. Full platform launch within a year. I leaned back in my chair, feeling overwhelmed and exhilarated in equal measure. A year ago, I'd been proud to hit 6-figure monthly revenue. Now, we were discussing technology licensing deals that could generate 8-figure annual contracts. There's one more thing, Christian said, and something in his tone made me look up sharply. This kind of expansion would require a larger investment round. My Dubai partners want to bring in additional funding sources. How much larger? Another $120 million. I blinked. Million with an M. Million with an M. It would give us the capital to execute the aggressive expansion timeline and fund the technology platform development simultaneously. And what would that mean for ownership structure? You'd still maintain majority control. That's non-negotiable from my perspective. But yes, your percentage would decrease as new investors came in. I nodded slowly. The business side of my brain understood that this was how scaling worked. You traded ownership percentage for growth capital and expertise. But the emotional side wondered if I was about to lose control of the company I'd built from nothing. I need time to think about this, I said. Of course, but Andrea. He stood to leave, then paused. What you've built here is extraordinary. This isn't about changing your vision. It's about giving that vision the resources to reach its full potential. After he left, I sat alone in my office staring at the financial projections. The numbers were compelling, but numbers only told part of the story. The real question was whether I was ready to transform from a startup founder to the CEO of a major company. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Saw the Boston Magazine article about your store. Very impressive. Would love to hear more about your expansion plans. I stared at the message for a long moment. Marcus had barely acknowledged my business for 3 years, but now that it was generating serious media attention, he wanted to hear about expansion plans. I deleted the text without responding. 3 days later, I called Christian with my decision. Let's do it. All of it. The 5-city expansion, the technology platform, the additional funding round. You're sure? I'm terrified, I admitted. But I'm also excited. If we're going to build something transformational, let's actually transform something. The next 6 months were the most intense period of my professional life. We hired a retail operations director who'd previously managed expansion for a major clothing chain. We brought in a technology team to develop the licensing platform. We signed leases in all 5 target cities and began coordinating construction timelines. Meanwhile, our original Boston store continued to exceed projections and the mobile app user base grew exponentially. Fashion Week coverage featured our designers prominently, and several major fashion schools reached out about partnership opportunities. But the real breakthrough came when we soft launched the technology licensing platform with 3 beta partners: a boutique chain in California, a department store in Texas, and an online retailer in New York. Within weeks, all 3 reported significant increases in customer engagement and average order values. The data is incredible. Our new technology director, Amanda, reported during one of our weekly team meetings, customers using our recommendation algorithms are spending 40% more per transaction and returning to shop 30% more frequently because they're finding pieces they actually love instead of settling for what's available. I said, exactly. We're not just improving sales. We're improving the relationship between retailers and customers. The validation was intoxicating. For 3 years, I believed that personalized curation could transform fashion retail. Now, we had proof that the concept could scale across different types of businesses and customer bases. 2 weeks before our multi-city grand opening, I was reviewing final logistics when Sarah knocked on my office door. "Andrea, your brother is here. He says he'd like to talk to you about something important." Marcus was waiting in our conference room wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He stood when I entered, offering the kind of formal handshake we'd somehow defaulted to in recent years. "Andrea, thanks for seeing me. I know you're incredibly busy. What can I do for you, Marcus?" He looked around the conference room, taking in the architectural plans for our new stores, the marketing materials for our technology platform, the team photos from our recent company retreat. "I wanted to congratulate you properly," he said finally. "What you've accomplished here is remarkable. I owe you an apology for not recognizing that sooner." I waited for the but that usually followed Marcus' rare moments of acknowledgement. "I also wanted to discuss something with you. A potential opportunity that could benefit both of us." There it was. What kind of opportunity? Marcus straightened his tie. A gesture I recognized from childhood as his tell when he was nervous about something. "Well, as you know, my architecture firm has been growing steadily. We're at the point where we're considering strategic partnerships to expand our commercial retail expertise." I had a sinking feeling about where this was heading. Given your success in retail development and my background in commercial architecture, I thought we might explore ways to collaborate. Perhaps I could consult on your future store designs, help optimize the spaces for both aesthetic appeal and operational efficiency. Translation. Now that my business was successful, Marcus wanted to find a way to attach himself to it professionally. "That's an interesting idea," I said. "But we already have an excellent relationship with our current architectural team." Of course. I'm not suggesting we replace anyone. More like supplementary expertise, family helping family, you know." I studied my brother's face, seeing ambition mixed with something that might have been genuine desire to be part of what I'd built. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "Absolutely. No pressure. I just wanted to put the idea out there." As he gathered his things to leave, Marcus paused at the door. "Andrea, I really am proud of you. I know I haven't always been the most supportive brother, but seeing what you've created here, it's impressive. Really impressive." After he left, I sat in the conference room thinking about family success and the complicated ways people change when the dynamics of power shift. In a week, we'd open 5 stores simultaneously and launch a technology platform that could reshape an entire industry. But somehow, the conversation with Marcus felt like the biggest test yet. The 5-city grand opening was scheduled for a Thursday in October, perfectly timed to catch the beginning of the holiday shopping season. We'd spent months coordinating everything from inventory distribution to staff training to synchronized marketing campaigns across all markets. But 3 days before the opening, I got a call that would change everything. "Andrea, we have a problem." Sarah's voice was tight with concern. "Marcus has been calling our stores directly, identifying himself as your business partner and asking detailed questions about our operations." I sat down my coffee so hard it splashed onto my desk. "He's what?" The manager in Chicago called first. Apparently, Marcus told them he was conducting a family business review and needed access to our sales projections and staffing plans. When she asked him to contact you directly, he said you were too busy and had asked him to handle preliminary assessments. My hands clenched into fists. Please tell me she didn't give him anything. She didn't, but only because we'd trained all the managers to verify any unusual requests through me or you directly. The Austin manager got a similar call yesterday and Portland this morning. I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar mixture of anger and disappointment. Just when I'd started to believe Marcus' apology was genuine, he'd found a new way to insert himself into my business without permission. There's more, Sarah continued. He's also been reaching out to local press in each city, introducing himself as a family consultant who can provide background on your company's development. Background meaning what? According to the reporter in Seattle who called to fact-check, Marcus told them he'd been instrumental in connecting you with your initial investors and helping develop your expansion strategy. I stood up and walked to my office window, looking down at the street where people were going about their normal lives, unaware that I was currently dealing with a family crisis that could derail months of careful planning. Sarah, send a message to all store managers immediately. Any calls from Marcus Davies should be directed to me personally. No information about operations, sales, or anything else gets shared without my explicit approval. Already done. But Andrea, what if he shows up at the openings? He could cause problems with customers or press if he starts claiming credit for things he didn't do. That was exactly what I was afraid of. The grand openings were major media events. Fashion Week publications were sending photographers. Local news stations were planning coverage. And several fashion influencers were attending as special guests. If Marcus decided to position himself as some kind of family business advisor, it could confuse the narrative and undermine the story of what we'd actually built. Let me handle Marcus, I said. You focus on making sure everything else is perfect for Thursday. After we hung up, I sat at my desk trying to decide how to approach this. Part of me wanted to call Marcus immediately and shut down whatever he was planning, but another part of me wondered if there was a way to handle this that wouldn't create a bigger family drama. My phone buzzed with a text from Christian. Can you meet for coffee? Something we need to discuss before the openings. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a quiet cafe near our office, both looking more serious than usual. I assume this is about Marcus, I said without preamble. Christian nodded grimly. My assistant got a call this morning from someone claiming to represent your family's business interests. They wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss ongoing consulting arrangements. Let me guess, Marcus. He didn't identify himself directly, but the caller mentioned being your brother and having extensive experience in commercial architecture. Said he was exploring ways to formalize his advisory role with the company. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. Advisory role. He has no advisory role. That's what I told my assistant to communicate. But Andrea, this kind of confusion could be problematic if it continues. Investors and partners need to be clear about who has authority to speak for the company. He was right. Of course, in the startup world, unclear authority structures were red flags that could scare away funding or create legal complications. What do you think I should do? Honestly, confront him directly. Set clear boundaries about what he can and cannot do regarding the business. If he pushes back, we might need to involve legal counsel to send a cease and desist letter. The idea of taking legal action against my own brother felt surreal, but I could see how we might end up there if his interference continued. I'll talk to him, I decided. Today, I called Marcus from the cafe, asking if he could meet me for dinner that evening. He sounded pleased to hear from me, which made what I had to do even more unpleasant. We met at a restaurant halfway between our offices, neutral territory where neither of us would feel like we had the advantage. Marcus arrived first and was already seated when I walked in, scrolling through what looked like business emails on his phone. Andrea, perfect timing. I was just reviewing some preliminary thoughts about store layout optimization. I had some fascinating insights after visiting your Boston location again last week. I sat down across from him, declining the wine menu the waiter offered. This needed to be a clear-headed conversation. Marcus, we need to talk about the calls you've been making to our stores. His expression shifted slightly, the enthusiasm dimming. I was wondering when that would come up. You were wondering, Marcus, you've been impersonating a business partner and requesting confidential operational information. That's not acceptable. Impersonating is a strong word. I was trying to help, conducting informal assessments to see if there were areas where my expertise could be valuable without asking me first. Without any authorization from the company, how is that helping? Marcus sat down his water glass, his jaw tightening in a way I recognized from childhood arguments. Andrea, I'm your brother. I have a legitimate interest in understanding how the family business is performing. Family business. I kept my voice level, but it took effort. Marcus, this isn't a family business. This is my company, which I built with my own vision and my own work with significant outside investment from my friend. Your friend who you had nothing to do with connecting me to professionally. Christian sought me out because of what I'd already built. Not because of any introduction or recommendation from you. Marcus's face flushed slightly. That's not entirely accurate. Christian has known about your work for months because of Sophie's enthusiasm. Yes. But he also knew that getting involved would mean dealing with family dynamics. My relationship with him provided a level of comfort about the personal aspects of the investment. I stared at my brother, wondering if he actually believed what he was saying or if he was just committed to rewriting history until it cast him in a more favorable light. Even if that were true, which it isn't. It wouldn't give you the right to interfere with business operations or speak to the press about my company. Interfere. Andrea, I was trying to support you. The retail expansion is complex, and having family involved in oversight could provide stability that outside investors would appreciate. Marcus, I leaned forward, making sure he was looking directly at me. I need you to stop. No more calls to our stores. No more conversations with reporters. No more unauthorized investigations into our operations. This needs to end now. He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face with an expression I couldn't quite read. And if I don't agree to those limitations? Then I'll have our legal team send you a formal cease and desist letter, and any future communication will go through lawyers. The threat hung in the air between us. Marcus looked genuinely surprised, as if he'd never considered that I might push back this directly. You'd really take legal action against your own brother to protect my company and my employees? Absolutely. He nodded slowly, something shifting in his expression. I see. Well, I certainly don't want to cause problems for you. Good. Then we understand each other. We do. Congratulations on your success, Andrea. I hope the openings go well. He left cash on the table for his water and walked out without saying goodbye. I sat alone in the restaurant for a few more minutes, feeling drained, but also oddly relieved. The conversation had been unpleasant. But at least the boundaries were clear now, or so I thought. 2 days later, Sarah called me at 6 a.m. with news that would test those boundaries in ways I'd never anticipated. Andrea, you need to see this. Sarah's voice was tense as she handed me her tablet. Marcus just posted this on his LinkedIn. I read the post with growing disbelief. Excited to celebrate my sister Andrea's incredible achievement with the opening of 5 new retail locations this week. It's been rewarding to provide strategic guidance during her expansion phase, and I'm proud to support innovative family enterprises that are reshaping the fashion industry. Looking forward to continued collaboration as the business grows. Family business, your retail innovation, and proud brother. The post had been up for less than 2 hours and already had dozens of likes and several comments congratulating Marcus on his mentorship and asking about opportunities to work with family retail consultants. Strategic guidance, I said flatly. Continued collaboration. It gets worse, Sarah said, scrolling down. Look at the comments. Marcus had responded to several congratulatory messages by saying things like, Andrea has always been driven, and I'm glad I could help channel that energy productively. And family support makes all the difference in scaling challenging ventures. I handed the tablet back to Sarah, my hands shaking slightly with anger. Call our lawyer now. Already did. She's drafting a cease and desist letter, but she says social media posts are harder to address legally unless they contain specific false claims that damage the business. What about this isn't false? He didn't provide strategic guidance. There is no continued collaboration. He's literally making up a role for himself. The lawyer says the language is vague enough that it could be interpreted as opinion rather than factual claims. She can send a letter demanding he remove the posts and stop making future statements, but enforcement might be difficult. I closed my eyes trying to think through the implications. Today was Wednesday. Tomorrow we'd open 5 stores simultaneously in front of local media, fashion bloggers, and potential customers who might now be confused about who was actually running the company. What time does the first opening start? Chicago opens at 10 a.m. local time. That's 11 a.m. here. And the last one, Seattle at 2 p.m. local, which is 5 p.m. here. We'll essentially have openings happening all day as we move across time zones. I looked around our main office where the team was making final preparations for what should have been the biggest day in our company's history. Instead, I was dealing with family drama that could overshadow everything we'd worked for. Sarah, I need you to do something for me. Call each store manager and give them a heads up about potential family complications. If Marcus shows up at any of the openings, they should be polite, but make it clear that he's there as my brother, not in any official business capacity. What if he brings press with him or introduces himself to reporters as a business partner? That was exactly what I was worried about. Marcus was smart enough to know that correcting him publicly at his own sister's opening events would make me look petty and unprofessional. Then we handle it professionally and clarify the record afterward. But Sarah, I want you to make sure Christian is present for at least one of the openings. If there are questions about business structure or partnerships, he can address them authoritatively. The day of the openings dawned crisp and clear in Boston with perfect weather predicted for all 5 cities. I started the morning at our main office watching real-time sales data and customer feedback from the Chicago opening that had started an hour earlier. The numbers were incredible. Chicago had exceeded their opening day sales target within the first 3 hours, and customer reviews were overwhelmingly positive. Photos from the store showed excited shoppers exploring the designer sections and engaging with our sales associates exactly as we'd hoped. Austin just opened, Sarah called from across the room. Initial foot traffic looks excellent. I tried to focus on the success metrics, but part of my attention was constantly tracking social media and news coverage for any sign that Marcus was inserting himself into the story. At 1 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed the manager from our Portland store. Andrea, I'm so sorry to bother you on opening day, but we have a situation. Your brother is here with someone he's introduced as a business journalist from a local magazine. They're asking for an interview about the family business dynamics behind your expansion. My heart sank. What did you tell them? I said I'd need to check with you first, but Marcus told the journalists that you were probably too busy to take calls and suggested they speak with him as a family representative. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. Please ask them to wait for a few minutes. I'll call you right back. I hung up and immediately called Christian, who answered on the first ring. We have a problem, I said without preamble. Marcus is at the Portland opening with a journalist positioning himself as a family business representative. I'm already in the car, Christian said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Wait, you're in Portland? I flew in this morning to surprise you. Good thing, apparently. 25 minutes later, I was on a conference call with the Portland store manager, Christian, and the journalist Marcus had brought. This is Jessica Chen from Portland Fashion Weekly, the journalist said. I was hoping to get some background on the family business structure and how relatives contribute to the company's strategic direction. I appreciate your interest, I replied. But I think there may be some confusion. This isn't a family business. It's a company I founded and built independently with investment from my partner Christian Hayes, who's actually there with you today. Oh. Jessica sounded surprised. Marcus indicated that he'd been involved in developing the expansion strategy and connecting you with initial funding sources. Marcus is my brother and I appreciate his support, but he hasn't been involved in any business operations or strategic planning. Christian would be the appropriate person to speak with about our expansion timeline and investment structure. I could hear muffled conversation in the background, presumably Marcus realizing that his narrative was falling apart in real time. Actually, Jessica said after a moment, it might be clearer if I spoke with Christian directly. Marcus mentioned he needed to leave soon anyway. After the call ended, Christian texted me. Marcus left quickly after you clarified his role. Interview went well, focused on business model and expansion plans. No more family confusion. By the end of the day, all 5 stores had exceeded their opening targets. Press coverage was universally positive, and our mobile app downloads had spiked dramatically. It should have been a perfect day. But that evening, as I was finally relaxing with a glass of wine and reading through customer reviews, my phone rang. "Marcus, Andrea, I think we need to talk. I think we covered everything at dinner on Monday. Actually, that's what I'm calling about. I may have misunderstood the boundaries you were setting." I almost laughed. May have misunderstood. "Marcus, you showed up at my opening with a journalist and told them you were a business representative. After I explicitly asked you to stop interfering. I was trying to support you. The journalist approached me, not the other way around, and you chose to position yourself as having an official role instead of simply saying you were there as a supportive brother." There was a long pause. "You're right. I should have handled that differently." "Yes, you should have, Andrea. I want to apologize, and I want to make an offer that might help both of us moving forward." I sighed. "What kind of offer?" "I've been thinking about our conversation, and I realize I approached this all wrong. Instead of trying to insert myself into your existing operations, what if I provided genuine value by helping you manage the administrative complexity of rapid expansion?" "What does that mean specifically?" "You're about to be overseeing 5 retail locations plus the technology platform plus ongoing expansion planning. That's an enormous operational load for one person. I could take on project management responsibilities, coordinate with vendors, handle regulatory compliance, the kind of detail work that's necessary but doesn't require your direct attention." It was a more reasonable proposal than his previous attempts to involve himself. But I was skeptical of his motivations. "Marcus, why is this so important to you? You have your own successful career. Why do you need to be part of my business?" Another pause. Longer this time.